Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is Darkside Walker and because I have an explosion of build suggestions that are based on mono elemental runs, I figured I may as well pop on another one of those. This one was submitted on my Discord and not gonna lie, I don't know how I feel about this one, but let's go ahead and pick it up, and we'll see what happens. Because I'm not against the idea of trying out new ideas. This idea, on the other hand, just seems iffy. So what we have is, starting with the Avarice robe, we're doing Flame Strike. It's accidentally listed as Flame Breath, but that's something different. And then Ignition Rush, which I've never really had much of a soft spot for, but there you go. And then Fueled Berserk and Inferno Beam. I'm not gonna lie, yeah, I don't know how I feel about this, especially starting with the Avarice robe. Like, at the very least, this seems like a run that's going to be iffy, to say the least. Like, Inferno Beam is actually one of my least liked signatures, mostly because it's, again, one of those things that focuses down hard on mooks, but isn't very effective against bosses. And I'm not saying it's, ineffective. I'm just saying that against bosses, you could do way better than Inferno Beam. And I've also never been a big fan of Fueled Berserk runs, because I feel it puts you on a very mono-track kind of thought process. And also, since we've had the jazz soundtrack, I believe it was twice in a row, so let's go ahead and roll the die and see what we get. Good birds. You gonna tell me the number that's gonna come up? Alright, Riku, guess the number. Ah, you were way off, Riku. You're bad at this game. Alright, so we are doing piano solos. So it's nice that we're starting with the fiery paintbrush, because that's kind of what was recommended. But yeah, this run is going to be a bit of a slog. I think I'm going to leave that be. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and start in the Burning Furnaces just to get that level out of the way. Alright, so I now have to ask kind of a semi-serious question, because I already know the answer to this, but I'm curious as to why so many people like starting with the Avarice robe. I can't take that, it's not fire-based. If we're doing mono fire, then I can't suddenly take an electric move, now can I? Now, obviously, the reason is because you know that you're going to need a decent amount of money as you go through the run. But why is that more valuable than faster movement speed, or lower cooldowns, or, literally a host of other things that give you more of a leg up? Hello, Fairy. Wow, okay, thanks. Thanks, Iris, that's really nice. Like, I know one of the arguments that I'm pretty sure will come up is, yeah, but Dark Sage, you get so many damage ups while you're playing. That's not true. That to me sounds like... That to me just sounds like you haven't thought this through entirely. Remember, this is a roguelike... Ooh, more fairies. Remember, this is a roguelike game, and you are never guaranteed any damage ups. So just because it seems boring or perhaps unnecessary to start with something like that, that doesn't mean that it's a smarter move. Because sometimes what seems like a good idea just because it's a unique kind of selling point, so to speak, doesn't mean that it's necessarily the right idea. Lovely little freebie there, certainly not turning that down. No, if anything, the randomization tends to gear away from straight damage ups. Now, remember, something to remember, you have 72 relics that can be purchased. And that's 72 relics from the offense tab, the defense tab, and the miscellaneous tab. Here we go. So that's 216 relics that by themselves, and even though not all of them can show up in the shops, that's enough. That is enough of a spread to suggest that there's almost no way to suggest that something will always show up. And even though there's a number of cursed relics that can, of course, show up, again, one has to keep in mind the idea that even Nox isn't necessarily guaranteed to show up during a run. So it just kind of feels like that's just a little bit of misinformation. You're not always going to get a bunch of damage ups on every run. I've had it where I'm lucky if even one damage up shows up. So that argument to me just gets immediately thrown out the window because it's just making a poor assumption on how things work in the state of a roguelike game. You are definitely not guaranteed anything that does damage up just on merit of playing the game. Also, you are not being very helpful. The other thing to address there is that, let's see, what do we have here? Dagger of Midas and Token of Doom are probably my best bets here. There we go. and I forget what the term is that I'm looking for, but that's definitely an argument, not necessarily from ignorance, because that's not the fallacy that's being used here. You're just making a bad assumption about the availability of certain resources. Now, this run is an odd example of where I am getting a bunch of damage up relics, and it's going to make the run infinite. It's going to make the run maybe not infinitely, but a lot easier. But what I'm getting right now is why it's called a lucky run. This is far from a guarantee. Like I said, I run a lot of runs of this game, and getting this many damage ups, and there's even one more in the shop that I'll probably end up grabbing, but that is not normal for any run in this game. More often than not, you get inundated with things like, the raffle ticket, which I'm not saying that that's not helpful. But I am saying that it's not a damage up. And you're not suffering because you didn't take something that has an odd quality to it. Okay, so because I am starting with Avarice, that's a better choice than usual. And I can't do mono fire if I give her that, so I guess I won't. Yeah, also, I'd like to point out that Inferno Beam is one of those spells that I don't usually take. Not necessarily because it's one of those things that's meant for sweeping mooks, but mostly because it's a long cast. Like, that whole time I was holding up and was incapable of moving. And yes, I know you can dash out of it, but dashing out of it cancels out the rest of the beams if you dash out of it early, so you're kind of shit out of luck with that one. And I get it, it's one of those things that because it can block projectiles, it's a good defensive option. But like I said, I don't normally need my focus to be on the mooks. You want to put some focus there, but to me, a better signature is one that can either cover yourself no matter what comes up, or is just straight up better against bosses. So it's one of those things where I would say, yeah, I don't mind taking it as a standard, but as a signature, you can do better. Like, I still maintain that I think the best fire-type signature is Tracer Barrage. Also, I'm not sure why you would use Fueled Berserk with an Arcana with a basic that has a charge. Because you don't necessarily get the charged hit with the Fueled Berserk. And that, to me, kind of removes a little bit of incentive to use the charge Arcanas. But simultaneously, it does give the charge basics a little bit of a multi-functionality, which is nice. But yeah, because Inferno Beam has kind of that slow sweep, I even think that there are better mob sweepers than Inferno Beam. Its real strength is in its ability to block enemy projectiles, if you ask me. Which for some people may be enough, but I'm of the mind that by just blocking enemy projectiles, or maybe not blocking, but by just dodging enemy projectiles, I can typically get what I'm looking for that way as well. I am not sure about the luxury handbag, because as you can see, I don't exactly have a ton of my Arcanas, or I have exactly half of my Arcanas not charged up. But it doesn't matter that much for Fueled Berserk, because it does basically no damage on its own. That having been said, we can just take care of that now. Now we can take the luxury handbag without too many problems. My other argument as to why I say it's generally a better idea to start with something that helps enhance your combat abilities, and I should say there are multiple more reasons, but here's another one. When you get down to it, this game is very combat driven. It's very much a sort of magical beat 'em up. So, improving your combat abilities actually goes a good way further than you think. Now, I'm not spending a ton of money, so I probably wouldn't have... if I were using a different robe, I probably wouldn't have purchased Dagger of Midas, but I would have had the enhanced combat abilities from the beginning. Like, I have very little reason to have extra money or to have enhanced Chaos Gem gains. I guess part of that comes from personal background and experience with the game, where I don't always need that much money to get myself going. I can usually pick and choose what I need well enough. Which, the extra money is nice, but I'm not sure that means that the Avarice robe is the best starting choice. I know... Now, I know that seems kind of mean to say, considering that one of the arguments is, well, it's really good on single-element Arcana runs. Yes and no. Because, once again, I'd like to point out this is a very combat-heavy game. Ooh, more fairies. Okay. Yeah, we almost have the entire Fairy Force 5. That's friggin' incredible. And Ebon Wolf's Cloak would be a mighty fine purchase as well. But I think if I had to choose between Ebon Wolf's Cloak and a 5th combat option, or in this case, because of what the build is, I should say a 4th combat option. I think that's one of the reasons why I don't like Field Berserk runs very much, is because it limits your options. Now, the obvious argument for that is, yeah, but the basic spam will end up doing so much damage that it doesn't matter. To me, it kind of does. Okay, we definitely like the idea of another combat option with Fusion Flare. Because of Dagger of Midas, I'll grab that. Here we go. Ooh, I love Fusion Flare. Alright, we got one more combat room that we can do, and then it's on to the mini-boss, and then the twins. And then obviously I took Sidewinder's badge, because if you're going to be doing a Field Berserk style run, then Sidewinder's badge is pretty much your single best damage up. There we go. Is there anything else here I wanted? And I might as well grab this. So, pretty much the first thing that's going to come up is Dark Sage, you thought you said you didn't usually get so many damage ups in a run, but you've picked up a lot of them this time around. Let's see, started with 1, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Technically 7, but that one's not going to use. There's 7. And you are right, this time around I did. But that should be the operative word right there, this time. This is a very fortunate run. Owie. There we go. But something that has something to be said about that, though, and I've already kind of brought it up, is let's say that you do end up starting with a damage robe, and then you find all of these. Well, now you've got all of that extra damage and combat capability on top of starting with a combat-centric robe. Like, I just don't feel that it's a waste to start with something that boosts your combat capability, especially in a combat-centric game. And for what it's worth, yes, this is basically a retort to a conversation being had on my Discord server. And it's not that I don't understand what's being said there, I just don't necessarily agree with it. And my way of looking at it is, okay, so you can solve the problem of how to deal with, X combat room by having like 2 or 3 different things available that offer you this sort of like bonus and whatnot, or you could just take one relic that does the same thing as all the ones that you combined to do that thing. Yeah, I tried to dodge out of the way there, but the game wasn't having any of it. And ultimately, the rule still applies of the enemy can't do damage to you if they're dead. Much better now. Alright, well, we've got ourselves a more power-based run, so I'm going to grab Inferno Cannon. There we go. There we go. Also, keep in mind that at no point am I trying to go out of my way to invalidate other people's opinions. This is known as having a conversation. If you think that it's better to start a run with something other than like just something that modifies your combat abilities, and by modify combat abilities I mean like damage or critical hit-ups, then by all means, you do you. I'm not about trying to step on your toes. So how many cursed relics do I have? 1, 2... So that'll be 15 and 15. Alright, And as I've said before, I am not against the idea of tanking my speed to give myself more of a combat advantage. I don't have any evade chance, so that's not gonna help. So we'll go away! Woo! Now I can understand how it would be more appealing to someone to start with a relic that either occasionally enhances your Arcana or like lowers your cooldowns, and those again are things to consider because some Arcana just really need to be enhanced in order to be truly effective. Oh, whoops. But that's... we're going to bring up the magic word. To me, that's just inconsistent. And I would rather work with something that does something for me on a consistent basis. Like, even if it's something that's like a give and take. Because, yeah, the Anchor of Burden does do a negative thing consistently, but it also does enough of a positive thing that I'm willing to work with it. Because another thing to keep in mind is that whereas it does tank your movement speed, it's not just increasing your damage, it's also increasing, stun time? Damage and stuns are increased. So it also gives you a little bit more time to combo off on bosses. That, to me, is quite valuable. Now, allow me to address the other side of that. Yes, more often than not, when I die in this game, it is because of mooks ganging up. And I'm sure the same thing is true for a lot of players, but I find that the best strategy for that is to learn the patterns of how the enemies are going to try to get their work done, and counter that, not just to come in with, area sweepers akimbo. And that's another reason why I don't like to put my signature on as something that's meant to be more of an area sweeper to deal with mooks. Like, ideally, what you want is an Arcana that can handle both. Because honestly, I would rather have a sweeping option available that can also do a good job at handling bosses, and that's part of why I like Aqua Beam so much. Basically, what I'm trying to say is y'all underestimate Shu and Sura too much. Is at no point do you underestimate your opponent, especially when one mistake can make it so that you're taking a few hundred damage. All it really takes is one mistake against a boss, and you can be knocked out cold. Especially after all the updates the game has gotten and all the bosses have special attacks that they can perform at higher levels of difficulty. Now, I don't doubt people. I don't, blame. I shouldn't say doubt. I don't blame people for thinking that I only like things that are defensive, because that is very much the idea that I tend to put forward in my videos. But let's go ahead and put the record straight here. I have no problem with some defensive things. Like, I know I said I don't much like Inferno Beam, but keep in mind, I said I don't like Inferno Beam as a signature. As just a standard Arcana, it's definitely got a place. And I very much like that it's got that effect that it can nullify enemy projectiles. Lame. That was a mistake. Owie, owie, owie. And there we go. I should also point out that even though I did kind of talk smack about Fueled Berserk, it was mostly because Fueled Berserk puts you in kind of a single-track mindset. But that doesn't mean it's not strong. And with the right basic, it can really get a lot of work done for you, especially after you found Sidewinder's badge. Like, it's not just Fueled Berserk, Earthen Knuckle either. There are plenty of basics that can take advantage of Fueled Berserk's speed boost. It's just a playstyle that I'm not big on because I like the whole idea of dodging around and comboing with different attacks. It's just a personal preference thing, but again, that doesn't mean that Fueled Berserk isn't strong. Obviously, it's quite good. But it's generally not something that I would include in a mono fire build, but I did it this time and it seemed to work out just fine. So in the long run, what I'm going to say is I may have a different point of view on some of the thoughts that have been brought up, but that doesn't mean that those thoughts are invalid. I just think it's dangerous to spread around the sort of misinformation of, oh, you're always going to get a bunch of damage ups. No, far from it. Sometimes you're lucky if you get 1 or 2 damage ups. And if you always go into a run with this mindset of, oh, my combat abilities are going to get enhanced no matter what I do, maybe I better start a run with this, thing that makes grass grow behind me as I walk because that's a unique effect. Unique effects aren't always useful effects, and it's it's definitely a mindset that has a place, but can easily not only be misinterpreted but lead to a lot of trouble. So respect being able to start with a good damage up relic. Respect the idea of being able to start with something that gives you a head start, because all of that has a place. So there you go, that's my little rant. But this run, even though I'm not a big fan of the Avarice robe, worked out plenty well this time around. So thank you guys very much for watching. If you liked what you saw, subscribe to the channel, drop me a comment. Let's have a discussion, not a toxic discussion, because the moment name calling and just general like anger start coming out, then it's no longer a healthy discussion. Yeah, spread word that there's this really loud guy who likes to play Wizard of Legend. Who knows? And I will see you guys in the next one. My name is Dark Sage Walker, and I will be seeing you.